Well, podcast family, it's been a long time, but we are back together again. I think that was the longest drought of a podcast we've had in a pretty long time.
Yeah, I don't even know how many weeks it's been. I know we've had a number of conflicts, a number of other things going on. I've been out of town some, so it's been a busy season. Appreciate everybody being patient, and it's good to be back here today.
Some of them were patient, Pastor. Some of them,
some were not.
The angry letters were coming to my house. It was.
Well,
these
patience
people, when
is
they
a fruit
don't
of the
get
Spirit.
a podcast,
Yeah, I understand.
they let me know about it.
Well, I'm sorry you've been the recipient of such vitriol.
Lightning rod for
it isn't his fault. I promise you, it isn't his fault.
Podcast aggression. But we're back. We're back on the Ricecast here. My name is Anthony Russo. We are in just an obnoxiously beautiful Clearwater, Florida. Boy, we do spring not for very long, but we do it right.
We do it really well. It's a beautiful time of year. Flowers are blooming. I have some lilies in my house that are just blooming gorgeous. It's I love flowers, and so it's a beautiful time of year. And obviously, it's a great week, Easter week. Man, we're looking forward to the coming weekend and everything that goes along with it.
Big week. I don't care for the pollen, Pastor. That was a big issue for me in my neighborhood. Do you have oaks in your neighborhood?
Yeah, I have a big oak tree in my front yard. So the pollen just kind of falls all over everything. You clean it up. 2 hours later, it looks like you hadn't done anything.
It is literally we did that. We did the leaf blower. We blew off the whole driveway. The whole family's out there. Kids are playing in the front yard.
You wake up the next day, it's like
not even the next day. I said, I bet you if you did that, you took that leaf blower back to the front of the driveway and you did that all again, you'd end up with a pile of pollen. And sure enough, I was like, you could keep doing this.
Yeah,
I don't care for the pollen, but that's other than that, it is a really beautiful time. Yes, some things going on, some things we need to talk about. Not the least of which is that Tom Brady's coming back to play for the Bucs, Pastor.
Have we not done a podcast?
We have not done a
podcast. Wow. That seems unfortunate.
I think we've all been processing the news.
Well,
this was a big switch for us. We thought we were going to be terrible.
I didn't know it'd been that long. My goodness. Anyway, yeah, it's exciting news for us, and the Rays are playing, and again, good news for folks in Tampa. We have a new coach. It's been quite the offseason.
It has been.
We have a new coach. We have the quarterback's coming back. Mm-hmm. So people that bought, like if you bought tickets in that interim part, you really look smart now.
Yes.
Because as soon as he came back, now they make you buy 2-year packages. Did you know that? You can't buy a year season. Now it's 2 years, which was very smart of them. As usual, if you had hit the right time, you'd have been perfect.
Did you happen to catch the story of the guy that bought Tom Brady's last touchdown pass?
Yeah, paid a truckload of money for it, and now we find out. Well, we hope it's not his last touchdown pass.
On all
Very likelihood, it's not his last touchdown pass.
And it was like a week. I mean, it was very unfortunate seeing that story.
That poor guy. Yeah.
Tom
should buy it back from him. Don't you?
That would be nice.
Yeah. What is that to Tom Brady?
Not much.
Not much money.
Not much.
But the poor guy, he hawked his soul for that.
He really did, and got to display it, for days maybe. Had to invite a couple of neighbors over.
Touchdown pass, Tom Brady, for the year.
There you go. There's the last one in 2021 or 2022. That's big news. But there has been, we know there has been a lot going on around Calvary, especially here with our Calvary family. And I know one question I get a lot, Pastor, even though we have bigger things kind of ahead of us right now. This is such a big week for us here at Calvary and just as believers. But I get the question a lot, just how are you? How are you doing?
We're doing fine. For those that, are trying to read between the lines, obviously it's been a busy month. We've had some just issues. And then with the whole Southern Baptist thing, there's been some issues. And we're not going to talk about that much today. Mm-hmm. Maybe sometime we will. I don't know. I've thought about it. Maybe we'll come back and do a whole podcast at some point, talk about all that went on. I'm still kind of processing how much to talk about and what to say. But we're doing fine. It's kind of, in all honesty, there's been a little bit of a grief process to this, and a lot of misinformation online and so forth. But right now, our intent is to focus on our church and our people and do what my heart is to do, is pastor our people and to lead our team here and to preach the gospel. And so changes happen. God is sovereign over everything. He has a purpose, and we'll trust him and move on.
Yeah, well, Pastor, I know I speak, I've said it a lot, especially recently, but I get to do this podcast with you. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's so fun. I'd love to talk to Willie about some of these things. And I know I speak for a lot of people when I say, we're praying for you, praying for your family during this whole thing. And we love you.
Yep,
the Calvary family loves you here.
Yep, and thank you. It means a lot. We've heard from so many people. And remember, we have another family that got caught up in this. And again, some know the story. If not, just don't worry about it right now. But another family that has really didn't ask for this, that has just really been they feel like they've been run over by a bus too. They didn't ask for this, and my heart goes out to them, and we're talking constantly. And our church family's coming around them also. So that's what churches do.
Yeah.
All the stuff online and out there. That's it's real because it's there and it hurts and it affects people's lives. But churches are about relationships, and they're not about the Twitter or social media. They're about the people you know and do life with, and that's what matters in the long scheme of things. So we're gonna move on, do life together, and trust the Lord, and to use this for His purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, well said, Pastor. And I know, like I said, me and a lot of other people here are praying for you and thankful for your leadership through all this. Going into that, and now we're coming out of this last Sunday we did another sermon on Revelation. There's just been a really great series. We keep hearing from people online how thankful they are for this series and for the clarity it's brought on some things. And this is the longest series you've ever
Well, it is.
done.
I'm not, different preachers approach it different ways, and some preachers will preach all the way through books, like the book, so they'll be in there a year and a half. I typically don't do that. I'm an expository preacher, but I take kind of sections. So, I might preach through a section. Sometimes I preach through entire books when they're shorter, but just my pattern has been, right or wrong, to usually do a series at, 6-8 weeks, something like that. Maybe we did 8 or 10, I don't know. But somewhere around 6-8 is a good series for me. And we'll take a section or a chapter or whatever. And you can do smaller books that way. But anyway, this we just decided to kind of do the grand scheme of it. Obviously, you can't delve into every single verse when you do that, but we've gone through the book and preached through the book. And I think we're planning 13 messages to go through the entire book. And that's because we didn't have to do 2 and 3. We did that about a year and a half ago.
Right.
Otherwise, it would have added another 7 or 8 messages. But it's been probably, and I knew this would be, it seems like everything corresponds at once, but it's probably been the most challenging series I've ever taught through in a sermonic way, because it's a challenging book, first of all. There's lots of views about it, and lots of way people wrestle with this highly this book that's completely different than the rest of the New Testament because of its symbolism, its imagery, and it clearly is about symbolism and imagery. It's, again, what we call apocalyptic literature. It's a type of literature. But that does not diminish the literal truth that is being communicated through symbols and images and so forth. So it's been a challenging series to navigate and to try to stay focused, again, as I've always said, on the text, not on various eschatological theories.
Right.
And most of the time when people ask you to teach through Revelation, as we said, they want you to teach a theory. And I've had a little bit of that, like, wait. And I go, well, I'm not teaching you a theory. I'm just interacting with the text. And I'm aware of various theories, and I'm aware that various theories drive you to certain conclusions. And where that's been the case, I've tried to acknowledge that. Anyway, it's been a fun, challenging series to teach through, and I appreciate the great response. And the good news is we're getting to the really good parts.
Yeah.
We've gone through the bowls, and we've gone through the bowls of wrath, and we've gone through the dragon, and all of which has been helpful for us to learn about. And people have said, hey, are you taking a break for Easter? Actually, no.
Yeah.
We're coming this week from Revelation 19. Read it. You'll understand why we're doing it on Easter. And I think it's going to be a great Easter message, a great Easter weekend for us. And then the 2 weeks after Easter, we're going to finish the last 3 chapters, which will talk about what happens after you die and what is heaven like. And so those are great questions that I think, even if you haven't been with us for the whole series, you care about.
Yeah.
And so chapter 20 is kind of like what happens after you die. And this idea of what happens when I stand before God, that's a very important question. And then the last 2 chapters really deal with new heavens and new earth and this promise of our eternity ahead. And it's great stuff. So we're going to have we're going to have really with Easter, 3 more weeks in the book of Revelation. And then we'll kind of get into our series for late spring, summer, which I'm also excited about. But we appreciate all the good feedback from Revelation.
And if you've missed any of those sermons, you can get caught up on our message archive on our website or on our YouTube channel. Both ways you can get caught up. Pastor, it did work out nice that we did not cover, the great harlot on Easter Sunday.
Yes.
That was...
Yeah, or the bowls of wrath. We did try to map it out. We kind of knew where we needed to be by Easter.
That would have been a tough one.
That would have been a tough one. And we also know, like every church, we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of people who show up this weekend who haven't been here for the series.
Yeah.
And some of them have been watching online. I hope they're going to come this weekend. By the way, consider the Saturday night service or the first service on Sunday morning, just to get back to logistics, because they will be, we'll have most space in those services. So if you're like, well, what service should I go to? Consider Saturday night, or consider the early one on Sunday, because we'll have the most room. Obviously, the 9:30 and 11 o'clock services at Clearwater and Easter will be full, very full. And, of course, those are the only 2 times at our Seminole campus, and they'll be full, so you have to go 9:30 or 11. But they'll be great services, both of them. So we're looking forward. I don't know how many services that is, and I can't really count that high, 8, 9, or 10.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and just getting into the logistics of the weekend, we have the Good Friday service also, the Friday at noon here at Clearwater. For me, I feel like this is really the first Holy Week weekend in really years, because even last year we were still felt like we were coming out a little bit into a more normal place, and this year really, for me, I've got like a little anticipation because it feels like we're kind of like back, and we're able to gather.
Probably the first normal one in 3 years. I mean, obviously 2020 was taken from us. That one we'll always remember. Painful. 2021. As you said, we were back. It was a great day. But it was still, it's just, anyway, it's nice to be on this side of things and just moving forward and kind of moving on with life as it now is. And so it's going to be a great, great weekend. I know we still have a lot of people watching online. We understand that. Glad you can. But there's nothing like being in the room if you can be there. And I'm telling you, the music's going to be incredible. It's going to be a great moment. And I think, it's just going to be a wonderful celebration for us.
So this is interesting because you talked about this some earlier when you're doing series and you're thinking about teaching on Sundays through the year. You come up to Easter and you sort of know Easter's got to be Easter. Christmas has got to be Christmas. Mother's Day's got to be Mother's Day. That was a little bit of a joke. You could do some different things on Mother's Day. But the Easter story, I think it's so special for me in our belief in our tribe that we do this every year. The same time we plant on this story, and what I think is interesting, I was chatting with you just a little bit about how the Easter story, you might know it, you might know the big points, and you come upon it every year. But your stage of life, where you're at in your life, might be different every time you hit Easter, and that might bring you to see things a little differently. You might see something if you choose to take this week and to lean into this story and really what it means. Different things might jump out at you at different points of your life. You might, when you're a kid, you have a level of understanding. As you grow up, maybe as you become a parent, maybe if you're grieving, there's just different things that can jump out at you. So I want to, first of all, encourage everybody to be leaning into this story, obviously, this time of year. But then I wanted to ask you, a lot going on, your stage of life personally. I'm wondering, as you're reading through Revelation and you're teaching through those texts and you reflect on the Easter story, anything jumping out at you this year about Easter, the Easter story?
Well, first of all, I think it's so true. As I've first been pastoring 38 years now, and you first start thinking, like, what am I going to preach every Christmas and Easter, And as Baptists, we don't really have this liturgical calendar as formal as others, but Christmas and Easter are still there. Yeah. And but the older I get, the more I love both those seasons. And now I'm at a place where it's just, you can't wait to preach it again every time because it's not, there's so much there. Both are focused around Jesus. We focus on the incarnation of Christ at Christmas. We focus on the resurrection, death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. That is an inexhaustible subject. Yeah. You can't, it's both are gospel centric and it's inexhaustible. So, you can tell the narrative, but you also realize that all the Scripture is pointing to these climactic events. So it really is inexhaustible. And so people will even notice, like our Christmas series will bounce around from, the gospel, one of the gospel narratives, usually either Matthew or Luke, but John also. But then sometimes I'll go to the Old Testament and do a series out of the Old Testament, as we did like Isaiah, I think, a year or two. And sometimes we'll go to one of the epistles where we really focus on a Christological passage. And all of that works with Christmas. So it's inexhaustible. Revelation and Easter. Easter, same way. There's so much that can be talked about. And oftentimes we just do a standalone message or we're finishing a message. Occasionally we're starting a series. But I think, you just want to focus on the events of this week because it's the heart of the gospel. And a lot of people may be going, well, what in the world does Revelation have to do with Easter?
Right.
Well, a ton. Because Revelation is, again, not just a code to figure out end-time events. That's a very, I think, superficial way of looking at Revelation, very one-dimensional. It certainly speaks about eternity. It certainly speaks about our future. But as we've said all the way through, Revelation is about spiritual truth. It meant something to the 7 churches that got the letters. It meant something to churches throughout time. It means something to us today. It's not just a code to try to figure out what is going to happen for some future group that lives. It's not that at all. It's revealing spiritual truth, things that have been, things that are now, things that will be. And it ties to the triumph of Jesus over everything. That this, you go to Revelation 4 and 5, where this is the Lamb who looks like he had been slaughtered, but he's standing in the midst of the throne.
Yeah.
Well, that's the resurrection. He was slain, and now he's standing, and he's in the middle of the throne. He's God. You have all of that. Boom. In Revelation 19 is the passage we'll see is this great feast. It's the uniting of the church with the Lamb, the marriage supper of the Lamb, the very thing Jesus talked about. And then we get this glorified picture of Jesus, stepping in, riding on a white horse. It's the triumph of Jesus. And the reason that we know that is true, the reason we believe in that, ties back to the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. He triumphed. So there's this great tie-in that is about the triumph of Jesus, the victory of Jesus, and the lordship of Jesus, that he's king and he's Lord. And it all comes back to the triumph over death that we celebrate this coming weekend. Your question, I didn't answer it, is a good one, because I do think what you're saying is true. As you get older, these are stories, the Bible's like this in general, but these are particularly stories that are like diamonds. A diamond you can turn in your hands, and you look at it, it's a little different. You turn it, it looks a little different. And every angle has its beauty to it. If you're able to afford a big one. Now, if you can only get a little one, you kind of have to really close one eye and get a microscope.
Shouts out to Rachel.
Yeah. Look close, Rachel. It's there. The beauty is there.
in there.
But every angle has its own beauty.
Yeah.
And I do think you're right. I think one of the things that helps me keep that story fresh is I try to imagine it. For several years, I've really been fascinated by this week. We did a series of messages a couple years ago called The Final Days of Jesus. It's one of my favorite series we ever did. And we literally just walked step by step, day by day through what was happening this Holy Week. I found that to be a profound experience, and I come back to it every year. I did chapel today for CCHS and just kind of came back to that, walking what was going on Monday, what was going on Tuesday, what was going on Wednesday. And I try to put myself there. And I think your question was, where do I see, what jumps out at me now?
Yeah, this year.
Well, again, I don't want people to read in between lines on anything, but I think, one, I see the courage of Jesus in facing the religious leaders in that last week. Pharisees, religious leaders who simply did not really get the gospel. And his courage of challenging them, I think, reminds me, and it convicts me, not to allow a religiosity to replace the message of the gospel. And so you just see the courage of Jesus, as he sometimes people have this impression that Jesus was kind of hiding out. Boy, they got him. exactly the opposite. He walks into the temple on Monday and turns over the tables. He walks into the temple on Tuesday and calls out the religious leaders, hypocrites, fools, blind guides, whitewashed tombs, murders. He's doing this in public.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, are listening to him. And the religious leaders are over there in the corner with their arms crossed. The Bible says, because he keeps telling these stories too.
Right.
There's a story of the two sons, the good son who, or the one son who the father tells him about what to do, and one son goes and does it, but then he leaves. The other son won't do it, but then he comes back.
Right.
Well, which one obeyed the father? And the Bible says they knew he was talking about them.
Yeah.
They knew he was talking about them. Which, they got the point.
It's such a good line too. It's like noted in there.
Yeah.
It wasn't lost on them who they were in this story.
They keep trying to trap him. That's the week they keep trying to trap him. Questions about the resurrection, questions about should you pay taxes to Caesar, all these questions, and they can't trap him.
Yeah.
But his courage, he did not hide that week. He was not hiding. He walked into the temple. This is this climactic moment. He walks into the temple and smacks the devil in the mouth. And the devil does not like it. And then the narrative changes, because then there's the moment of self-sacrifice. There's the moment where Jesus willingly lays down himself for our sins. And you see that. And yet, even in that, as he gives himself to the Father, it's not my will but yours be done. There's a powerful moment any time in your life when you come to that moment where you simply open your hands and say, not my will, but yours be done. And you trust God with the future.
Yeah.
And none of us will ever do that like Jesus did it. But the Bible does speak about how we identify with him in his suffering, that we might identify with him in his resurrection. There is this, in this whole idea of suffering, the cross, death, and resurrection, there is this motif, there is this melody that blends throughout reality itself. You see it in Revelation, and you see it in our own lives, that we don't – remember, I'm going back to Revelation 4 and 5. I turned to see the lion of Judah had conquered. I turned to see the lion, John says, and what I saw was a lamb. That's not what I expected.
Yeah.
You turn to see a lion, you know what you expect,
yeah.
like a lion. He turned, and what he saw instead was a lamb that looked like it had been slaughtered, but it was standing in the midst of the throne. Which means what? It means Jesus conquered through the cross. The lion was the lamb. Jesus conquers through sacrifice, through trusting God, through obedience, through the cross, and it's through the cross that he conquers. And the Romans are gone, but Jesus is Lord.
Yeah.
And that's the message of Easter. And I think that's the message, for all of us. Trust God with the future. The present is the present, but it does not mean, the agony of Friday cannot compare with the glory of Sunday.
Yeah.
So when you're in the moment of agony, the message of the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus is Sunday's coming. Sunday's coming. Sunday's coming. So trust God, because Sunday's coming.
Yeah. That's so good. And I think about, too, as you were saying that, there was a courage. There was, you can certainly read some of these texts and the way he talks to these religious leaders and things. You're like, it's kind of rough. He's actually being pretty, abrasive with them. But then he even, in these final moments, says, Father, forgive them. Like, there was such grace and mercy, even though he wasn't going to stand for this being twisted and being used to manipulate and hurt people. But at the same time, for those same people, that mercy and that grace in that moment. It really is. There's so many moments in this story that are so powerful.
Well, you see his courage and you see his compassion together. Courage, but at the moment when he could have protected himself, instead he sacrificed himself.
Right.
And, that's, something we should all just see. What does it mean to show courage in the right moment? What does it mean to sacrifice out of compassion in the right moment and trust God with the outcome?
And it really brings you back, too, to what we covered, I think, in the first or second message in the Revelation series, which is, John is in the position he's in. He's exiled on an island when he writes Revelation. and he doesn't get a lot of things you think might be useful to him in that moment. He gets a revelation of who Jesus is right now.
Yep. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's a Darrell Johnson quote, and I read it directly in that message, but you've summarized it well, which is, again, here's John, all the problems, exiled, and the churches are struggling themselves, by the way. Really, you look at the letters in chapters 2 and 3. They're got their own problems. Mm-hmm. Some have internal problems. There's external pressure. The Roman Empire seems as strong as ever, and it is growing in its hostility toward the Christian faith. And so the movement itself seems almost imperiled. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, what does John get? And it's that, Darrell Johnson says it beautifully. In that moment, he doesn't get a political action plan. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get more money from the church treasury. He doesn't get a strategic plan for church revitalization. All those things are helpful in their place. What he got was a fresh look at Jesus. Mm. So maybe this Easter, what we need is a fresh vision of who Jesus is. And when we see that, and all of his glory and all of his victory and all of his power, that's what will revive us. That's what will strengthen us. That's what will give us victory in our toughest moments.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a really special weekend. We certainly hope you can be a part of it. I'll run through this just one more time just to make sure it sinks in. But you can get these at calvary.us. It's right on the homepage, all this information. We have our Good Friday services at our Clearwater campus and online at noon. We know some people are not off work. You can join us online maybe during your lunch break. But if you can make it, we'd love to see you. Clearwater campus at noon on Friday. And then we have services on Saturday night at Clearwater and Eastlake, and Sunday morning at Seminole, Eastlake, and Clearwater. All the times are online, calvary.us. So we'd love to see you come out, be a part of Easter. Pastor, you going to make any deviled eggs for the family?
Well, I will not, but my wife very well might.
Yeah.
And I don't say that in a dismissive way, like
right.
I'm above it. No one would want to eat the deviled eggs I made.
This is and
she nails it.
Glad you said that.
She nails it. So yeah.
Sometimes Rach and I have this talk, and she's like, "You should make dinner," and I'm like, "Who wins?"
It's right. No one wins.
If I make, I can do it. Yes. I will do it.
Even she doesn't win.
You'll have to eat it, though, is the consequence.
But what that may mean is go get it.
Like, I will go get it. I'm happy to do dishes.
I am buying the ham. But listen, my wife, Cheryl, is a fantastic cook, and we do have family gathering, and kids have helped out this year. They're doing things. And so it's going to be I do hope people can gather. It's a wonderful celebration.
Yeah.
And it's a great time to have some of my grandkids over. I don't know that I'll have all of them over. I think I'll have 5 of the 6 over.
Yeah.
Obviously, Stephen is involved in ministry, so that makes it hard on Easter. But my girls are coming and bringing the other grandkids. So it'll be a great day. I hope people can celebrate. And I'm so glad you mentioned that Good Friday service. I think you said it's a communion service. We're going to have communion as part of that. So it's a very special service. We try to create that feel that is serious, somber, because we're contemplating what happened that Friday.
Yeah.
And the cross. We need to just focus on we sometimes run past that. We just want to get to Easter no, we need to see the cross, and we need to grieve, and we need to focus, and we need to go out. We need to leave that service kind of somber. Mm-hmm. I don't want to leave that we just need to we need to rest in that moment for a moment.
Yeah.
We need to walk in that, and then it makes Sunday that much greater when we rise up and realize Jesus is alive. Mm-hmm. The gospel is true. Heaven is real. Forgiveness is sweet. These things are true.
Yeah.
And it's overwhelming when we think about it. It's the greatest news. Again, I think it was Lewis who said, the one thing Christianity cannot be is moderately important. Mm. And for so many Americans, that's all it is, moderately important. But it cannot be moderately important. If it's true, then it is the greatest truth. If it is not true, then dismiss it. Worry more about deviled eggs or whatever you would worry about.
Right.
If it's true, it's the ultimate truth.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate truth. And it's the greatest news that has ever been broadcast in the universe. So when you see the end of Revelation and you see the victory, it's because of the truth of Easter. And so it really is an Easter message. Christ has conquered. He is reigning. He is coming. How do I know? Because the tomb is empty.
So good. Well, like I said, we hope that you can come out. We hope to see you then. And I'm committing to you now, podcast family. I will stay on top of the podcast. We will make sure we have another podcast very soon. Your insatiable podcast appetites will be met. We'll be back.
Not his fault. Not his fault. I promise you. I'm
going to say maybe one of them was my fault. But,
okay, it's completely his fault.
But yes, we hope to see you. Hope this is a very special time for you. Hope you can make plans to be a part of services this weekend. And we'll be back with another episode here soon.